I wasn't supposed to be there that night, and if I had trusted that feeling in my chest, everything that followed would have never happened. The cold hit me first, sharp and unforgiving, the kind of December chill that seeps through your coat and settles into your bones, turning every breath into something visible, something fragile. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I stood in front of a house that didn't belong in my world, a place too quiet, too perfect, like it had been waiting for something or someone. The street behind me was empty, no headlights, no footsteps, just the distant echo of Christmas music drifting from somewhere far away, cheerful and wrong against the silence wrapped around me. I remember checking the address on my phone again, my fingers trembling not from the cold but from something deeper, something instinctive that whispered I should leave, that I didn't belong here, but I had nowhere else to go, not tonight, not with everything chasing me from the life I thought I understood. The door wasn't locked. That was the first mistake. It opened too easily, like it had been expecting my hand, like it knew I would hesitate just long enough before stepping inside. Warm air wrapped around me instantly, carrying the faint scent of pine and something expensive I couldn't name, and for a moment, just a moment, I thought I had found safety. The lights were dim, golden, soft against the polished floors that reflected everything too clearly, including me. Small, out of place, a stranger standing in the wrong story. I took one step forward, then another, my heartbeat loud in my ears as the door behind me clicked shut. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it echoed anyway, deep and final, like a line being drawn that I couldn't cross back over. I turned immediately, grabbing the handle, twisting it harder than I needed to, but it didn't move. Locked. Of course it was locked. My breath hitched as I stepped back, my eyes scanning the room, noticing things I hadn't before. The cameras tucked into corners, the shadows that didn't feel empty, the kind of silence that only exists when someone is watching and choosing not to speak. Hello. My voice sounded. Smaller than I expected, swallowed by the high ceilings and the weight of something I couldn't see yet. No answer. Just the soft hum of a house that was very much alive. I should have run. I should have tried harder. But my feet didn't move, rooted to the floor as a presence filled the space behind me before I even heard it. Not footsteps. Not movement. Just him. I felt it before I saw him. The air shifted, heavier, colder in a way that had nothing to do with the weather outside. When I turned, he was already there, standing at the edge of the light like he had always been part of it, like I had simply failed to notice. Tall, still, dressed in a way that made everything else in the room feel less important. His eyes found mine instantly, dark and steady, not surprised, not curious, just certain, like this moment had already happened for him, like I was the one catching up. I opened my mouth, ready to explain, to apologize, to say I had the wrong house, the wrong address, the wrong everything, but the words didn't come out, because he spoke first. Quiet, controlled. You shouldn't be here. The sentence didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a fact. My throat tightened as I took a step back, shaking my head, finally finding my voice. I'm sorry, I thought, I didn't finish. Because he took one step forward, and somehow that was enough to stop everything else. Vietnamese, he said, almost to himself, his gaze never leaving mine, as if confirming something only he understood. My stomach dropped. He knew. I didn't know how, but he knew. Please, I whispered, my fingers curling into the sleeves of my coat, holding on to something, anything. I'll just go. I turned again, reaching for the door like it might suddenly cooperate, like it hadn't already decided my fate the moment it closed. It didn't move. Of course it didn't. Behind me, his voice came again, softer this time, but heavier, like it carried weight I couldn't see. You walked into the wrong house, he said, and I felt it, every word settling into place around me, building something I couldn't escape. I closed my eyes for a second, just 1 second, hoping when I opened them, this would all be gone, that I would be back outside in the cold where things made sense. But when I turned back, he was still there, still watching, still certain. And that's when I realized something I should have understood the moment the door clicked shut. I wasn't lost. I had been found. I did not move right away because something in the way he looked at me made it clear that running would not change anything. Not in this house. Not tonight. My hand stayed on the door handle for a second longer before I slowly let go, the metal cold against my palm even though the room was warm. I could feel his gaze tracking every small movement, not rushed, not impatient, just waiting, like he already knew how this would unfold. I really do not belong here, I said, forcing the words out carefully, trying to keep my voice steady even as my heartbeat refused to cooperate. I must have gotten the address wrong. I will leave, and you will not even remember I was here. It sounded reasonable. It sounded normal. But nothing about this place felt normal, and the silence that followed made that painfully clear. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he took another step closer, and the distance between us shrank in a way that made the air feel thinner, harder to breathe. "You think this is about an address?" he asked quietly, and there was something in his tone that made my stomach twist, not anger, not disbelief, something sharper, more controlled. I swallowed, my fingers curling slightly at my sides as I tried to find something to hold on to, some piece of reality that still made sense. "It has to be," I replied, though even as I said it, the words felt weak, like they did not belong here any more than I did. His gaze shifted for a moment, not away from me, but past me, towards something unseen, and I followed it instinctively, noticing the small red light of a camera blinking in the corner, steady and watchful. When I looked back at him, his expression had not changed, but something about the room had. It felt smaller now, more contained, like invisible walls had moved closer without making a sound. "No one walks in here by accident," he said, and this time the statement landed heavier, settling somewhere deep in my chest where fear had already started to take shape. I shook my head quickly, taking a step back without thinking, my heel catching slightly on the polished floor. "I did," I insisted, the words coming faster now, edged with something close to panic. "I was just trying to find somewhere safe. I saw the lights, and I thought." I stopped because I did not know how to finish that sentence anymore. Safe did not belong here. Not with him standing in front of me like that. Not with the door locked behind me. For a second, something flickered in his eyes, gone almost as quickly as it appeared, something I could not name, something that made my chest tighten for a different reason. He reached past me suddenly, and I flinched before I could stop myself, my shoulders tensing as his hand brushed the door beside my head. The sound that followed was soft but deliberate, another lock sliding into place. Not just one, more than one. Final. I froze, my breath catching as I stared at the door, then back at him. "Why would you do that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper now, because I was not sure I wanted to hear the answer. He did not step away. If anything, he seemed more certain now, more grounded in a decision I had not been part of making. "Because," he said slowly, each word measured, "the moment you walked in, you stopped being a stranger passing through." My pulse jumped, confusion and fear tangling together in a way that made it hard to think clearly. "I do not understand," I admitted, shaking my head again, this time more slowly, trying to make sense of something that refused to be explained. His gaze held mine, unyielding, like he was studying every reaction, every breath, every flicker of doubt. "You will," he replied, and there was no threat in it, no raised voice, nothing dramatic, and somehow that made it worse. Because it sounded like a promise. A quiet, unavoidable promise that whatever this was, it was only just beginning. I realized then that the silence in that house was not empty. It was controlled, like every sound had to ask for permission before it existed, and I was the only thing there that did not belong to that system. My breathing felt too loud, too uneven, and I tried to slow it down, tried to match the calm that seemed to follow him wherever he stood, but it was impossible. "What do you mean I stopped being a stranger?" I asked, forcing myself to hold his gaze even though every instinct told me to look away. He did not answer right away, and that pause stretched longer than it should have, heavy enough to make my thoughts spiral. Then he moved, not toward me this time, but past me, walking deeper into the house with a quiet confidence that made it clear he expected me to follow. I hesitated for a second, just one, my eyes flicking back to the locked door, to the faint reflection of myself in the glass, small and uncertain, before I turned and took a cautious step after him. The floor was warm under my boots, the soft glow of the lights guiding the path forward, revealing more of the place I had stepped into without understanding. Everything was precise, intentional, from the way the furniture was arranged to the absence of anything unnecessary, like the entire house had been designed for control, not comfort. He stopped near a long table set off to the side, a single glass resting on it, untouched, as if it had been placed there hours ago and left waiting. "Take off your coat," he said, not looking at me, his tone calm but absolute. I blinked, caught off guard by the normalcy of the request, by how it contrasted with everything else that had happened. "I am not staying," I replied quickly, the words sharper than I intended, clinging to the only control I thought I still had. That earned a glance from him, slow and deliberate, his eyes meeting mine again with that same quiet certainty. "You already are," he said simply. The room seemed to settle around that statement, like it had been waiting for him to say it out loud. I felt something tighten in my chest, frustration mixing with fear as I pulled my coat closer around me instead of taking it off. "You cannot just decide that," I said, my voice lower now, steadier, even though my hands were not. "You do not know anything about me." For a moment, I thought I saw something shift again in his expression, not surprise, not quite interest, but something that acknowledged the statement without agreeing with it. "Emily Carter," he said, and everything inside me went still. The sound of my name in his voice did not feel like recognition. It felt like confirmation. My mind raced, trying to catch up, trying to understand how he could know that, how any of this connected in a way that made sense. "How do you know my name?" I asked, the question coming out softer than I expected, because I was not sure I wanted the answer anymore. He stepped closer again, not enough to touch, just enough to make the space between us feel intentional. "Because," he said quietly, "you did not choose this house by accident." I shook my head immediately, the denial automatic, desperate. "That is not true. I was just trying to get out of the cold. I saw the lights. That is all." But even as I said it, the memory felt thinner, less solid, like something was missing from it, something I had overlooked in my rush to escape the night outside. His gaze did not waver. "That is what you think," he replied, and the way he said it made it clear there was more, something just out of reach that he could already see. I wrapped my arms around myself, not from the cold anymore, but from the weight of that realization pressing in from all sides. "Then tell me," I said, the words almost a challenge now, almost a plea. "What do I not understand?" He held my gaze for a long second, long enough for my heartbeat to pick up again, for the silence to stretch until it felt like it might break. Then, finally, he spoke. "Why they are looking for you." And just like that, the house did not feel like the danger anymore. I did. The words settled between us like something that had been waiting to be said, and I felt my stomach drop in a way that had nothing to do with fear alone, but something sharper, more personal, like a truth I had been avoiding had finally caught up with me. "That is not possible," I said quickly, the denial instinctive, almost automatic, because admitting anything else meant admitting that this night was not random, that I had not just made a mistake, that something had been moving long before. I stepped through that door. He did not react to my tone, did not argue, did not push, and somehow that made it worse. He simply watched me, like he was measuring how long it would take for me to catch up to something he already understood. "No one looks for someone who does not matter," he said, his voice low and even, the kind of calm that did not need to prove itself. I shook my head again, backing away slightly, my mind racing through every possibility I could think of and rejecting all of them just as quickly. "I am not important," I insisted, the words feeling fragile as soon as they left my mouth. "I work, I go home, I stay out of trouble. There is nothing about me worth looking for." He tilted his head slightly, not dismissing what I said, but not accepting it either. "That is what you believe," he replied, and there was a subtle difference in the way he said it this time, like he was not questioning my honesty, just my understanding. I felt frustration rise, sharp enough to cut through the fear for a moment. "Then explain it," I said, my voice stronger now, pushing back against the quiet pressure of the room. "If you know something, then say it. Because right now, none of this makes any sense." For a moment, he did not move, and I wondered if I had crossed some invisible line, if I had said too much or not enough. But then he turned slightly, reaching into the inside pocket of his coat with a motion so smooth it barely made a sound. When his hand came back out, he held something small, rectangular, and familiar. My breath caught before I could stop it. It was my phone, the same one I had been holding outside just minutes ago, the one I must have dropped when I stepped inside without thinking. I stared at it, confusion flashing through me as I tried to remember when he could have picked it up, how it could already be in his hand like it had always belonged there. "You lost this," he said, extending it toward me, and for a second, I hesitated, unsure if taking it would somehow make things worse. But I reached out anyway, my fingers brushing against his for the briefest moment before I pulled it back, the screen lighting up as soon as it recognized my touch. There were missed calls. Too many. The notification bar filled the top of the screen, one name repeating over and over again, unfamiliar and persistent. My heart started to race again, faster this time, more urgent, as I scrolled without thinking, my thumb moving automatically. Unknown number, unknown number, unknown number, and then one message. Just one. I opened it before I could stop myself. The words were short, simple, but they changed everything. "We know where you are." My breath left me in a quiet rush, my fingers tightening around the phone as I looked up at him. The room suddenly feeling smaller, closer, like the walls themselves had shifted while I was not paying attention. "I did not give this address to anyone," I said, my voice barely steady now, because I knew that part was true. I knew it with absolute certainty. "No one should know I am here." He watched me for a second longer, his expression unreadable, before he spoke again, quieter this time, but more certain than ever. "They did not need the address," he said. "They only needed you to walk in." And in that moment, the warmth of the house disappeared completely, replaced by something colder than the night I had tried to escape, something that made one thing painfully clear. I had not been hiding from anything when I came here. I had been led. The word lingered in my mind long after he said it, like it had roots that were slowly digging deeper the more I tried to ignore it. Led. I gripped my phone tighter, my eyes scanning the message again as if it might change if I looked at it long enough. But the words stayed the same, sharp and undeniable. "We know where you are." My pulse thudded in my ears, louder now, drowning out everything else, even the quiet presence of the man standing in front of me. "This does not make any sense," I said, more to myself than to him, shaking my head as I tried to piece together the last few hours, every step I had taken, every turn I had made. There had been nothing unusual, nothing obvious, just the cold, the empty street, the lights in this house that had felt like an answer to something. I had not even asked out loud. "Start from the beginning," he said, his voice steady, cutting through my spiraling thoughts without raising in volume. I looked up at him, hesitating for a second before I spoke, because saying it out loud made it real in a way thinking about it did not. "I left my apartment around 7. I began slowly, my voice uneven at first but gaining strength as I continued. "It was supposed to be a normal night. I was going to meet a friend, but she canceled last minute. I decided to walk anyway, just to clear my head." He did not interrupt. He did not react. He just listened, his attention focused in a way that made every word feel heavier. "It started snowing harder than I expected," I continued, my eyes drifting slightly as I replayed the memory. "The streets were getting empty. Too quiet. I remember thinking it felt strange, but I kept walking. Then my phone started acting weird. The screen froze for a second, then the map app opened by itself. I thought it was just a glitch. My grip tightened unconsciously. It showed a route. I did not even question it. I just followed it. The realization hit me again as I said it, sharper this time, clearer. I had not chosen the direction. Not really. He moved slightly then, not closer, but enough to signal that something I had said mattered. "And it led you here," he finished for me. I nodded slowly, my throat tight. I thought it was a shortcut, or maybe a place I could wait until the snow slowed down. I saw the lights and I stopped, because I knew how that sounded now. Not like a coincidence. Not anymore. Silence filled the space again, but this time it felt different, heavier with understanding instead of confusion. "Your phone did not glitch," he said finally, and the certainty in his voice left no room for argument. I stared at him, a cold wave moving through me that had nothing to do with the weather outside. "Then what happened?" I asked, even though part of me already knew I was not going to like the answer. He held my gaze, unflinching. "Someone guided you," he said, each word deliberate, measured. "Step by step, street by street, until you reached my door." I felt my breath catch, my mind trying to reject it, to find another explanation, something simpler, something less controlled. "Why?" The question came out almost without sound, because that was the part that mattered. The part that made everything else fall into place or fall apart. Why me? Why here? Why him? He did not answer immediately, and that pause stretched again, but this time it felt like he was choosing his words carefully, not because he did not know, but because he did. Because, he said quietly, out of every place in this city, this is the one place they cannot reach you. I blinked, the statement catching me off guard, shifting the fear into something more complicated, something that did not fit into a single emotion. So I am safe here? I asked, not fully believing it, not fully rejecting it either. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened, something that felt closer to truth than anything he had said before. Safer, he corrected. And somehow, that one word made everything feel even more uncertain than before. The way he said it stayed with me, that slight difference between safe and safer, like a line I could not see but was already standing too close to. I lowered my phone slowly, my fingers still wrapped around it, as if letting go would make everything worse, more real than it already was. Safer from who? I asked, my voice quieter now, not because I was afraid to speak, but because I was starting to understand that volume did not matter here. Nothing about this situation responded to panic. He watched me for a moment, as if deciding how much I was ready to hear, how much I could handle before everything broke apart. From people who do not make mistakes, he said finally, and something about that answer sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the winter outside. I swallowed, my mind trying to keep up, trying to connect pieces that did not want to fit together. Then why bring me here? I pressed, taking a small step forward without realizing it, drawn by the need to understand, even if the truth was not something I wanted. If they wanted me, why not take me somewhere else? His gaze did not shift, steady and unyielding, like he had already considered every version of that question. Because this house changes the rules, he said, his voice still calm. But there was something underneath it now, something sharper, more defined. Out there, they decide what happens. In here, I do. The certainty in that statement was not loud, not forceful, but it filled the space anyway, settling into every corner of the room until it felt like the walls themselves agreed with him. I felt my breath slow slightly, not because I was calmer, but because something inside me was adjusting, trying to survive in a place where control did not belong to me. So I am just supposed to stay here? I asked, my arms still wrapped around myself, holding on to what little stability I had left. Until what? Until they stopped looking? He did not answer right away, and that silence stretched again, familiar now, like part of the rhythm of this place. Then he turned his head slightly, not toward me, but toward something behind me, and I followed his gaze instinctively. A soft light blinked once near the far wall, subtle but unmistakable. A signal. Someone else was here. I felt it before I saw them, the presence of another person stepping into the edge of the room, not interrupting, not speaking, just waiting. When I turned back, his attention had shifted for only a second, just enough to acknowledge whatever message had been delivered without words. Then he looked at me again, and it was like nothing else existed. They are not going to stop, he said, and there was no hesitation this time, no pause, just truth delivered without decoration. My chest tightened, the weight of that settling in deeper than anything else he had said. Then what am I supposed to do? The question came out before I could filter it, before I could hold it back, because I did not have anything left to hide behind. He took a step closer, and this time I did not move away. Not because I was not afraid, but because running had already stopped being an option the moment that door closed. You stay, he said simply, and there was no command in it, no raised voice, just a statement that felt inevitable. You listen, and you stop assuming this is something you can walk away from. I stared at him, the reality of that sinking in piece by piece, heavier with every second. And if I do not? I asked quietly, not as a challenge, but because I needed to know if there was any version of this where I still had a choice. For the first time since I had walked into that house, something in his expression shifted in a way I could not ignore, not softer, not kinder, but more direct, more certain. Then you learn the difference between being outside that door, he said, his voice dropping just enough to make every word land, and being inside it. And somehow, I understood without him having to explain any further. Outside meant unknown. Inside meant him. And for the first time since this started, I was not sure which one was more dangerous. The silence after his words did not feel empty anymore. It felt like a decision waiting to be made, and the worst part was realizing that I might not be the one making it. I stood there, still holding my phone, still trying to steady my breathing, but something inside me had already shifted, something that understood this was not a situation I could talk my way out of. "You keep saying I cannot leave," I said slowly, choosing each word carefully now, because I had started to realize that everything I said here mattered more than it should. "But you have not actually stopped me." It was the closest thing to control I could reach, a small line I could draw between his certainty and my reality. For a moment, he did not respond, and I wondered if I had pushed too far, if I had misunderstood the boundaries of this place. But then he stepped slightly to the side, just enough to clear the space between me and the hallway that led back toward the front door. "Go," he said. Just one word. Simple. Open. And somehow more unsettling than everything that came before. I hesitated, my eyes narrowing slightly as I tried to read him, to find the catch, the hidden condition that had to exist. "You are serious," I said, not quite believing it. He did not move. "I do not repeat myself," he replied, calm as ever, like this was just another moment already accounted for. My heart started to beat faster again, not from fear this time, but from something closer to urgency. This was my chance. If I could reach the door, if I could get outside, then maybe none of this would follow me. Maybe this would all stay contained in this house, in this moment, in him. I turned without saying anything else, my steps quick at first, then faster as the hallway opened up in front of me, the warm light guiding me back the way I came. The door was still there, exactly as I left it, tall and solid and real. I reached for the handle, my fingers closing around it, and for a second, everything stopped. The memory of the message flashed in my mind. "We know where you are." I hesitated, just for a second. Then I twisted the handle. It did not move. My breath caught, my hand tightening as I tried again, harder this time, the metal pressing into my palm as if force alone could change the outcome. Nothing. The door stayed locked. Of course it did. I closed my eyes briefly, frustration and something deeper rising together, something I could not fully name yet. When I turned back, he was still there, exactly where I had left him, watching, waiting, like he had known how this would end from the beginning. "You said I could go," I said, my voice sharper now, the edge of something breaking through. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. "I said you could try," he corrected, and the difference between those two words landed harder than anything else. I took a step toward him, anger pushing through the confusion now, giving me something solid to stand on. "This is not a game," I said, my voice low but steady. "You do not get to decide what happens to me." For the first time, something almost like approval flickered in his expression, brief but unmistakable. Not because I had challenged him, but because I had stopped pretending I was not part of this anymore. "You are right," he said quietly. "I do not decide everything." He paused, just long enough for the weight of that statement to settle. "But I decide what happens in this house." The words did not feel like a threat. They felt like a boundary, one I had already crossed the moment I stepped inside. I stood there, the distance between us unchanged, but everything else different now, heavier, clearer in a way that made it impossible to ignore. "Then tell me what happens next," I said, the fight in my voice still there, but quieter now, more focused. Because if I could not leave, then I needed to understand. He held my gaze for a long second, and when he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before, but more certain than anything he had said all night. "Next," he said, "you stop thinking of this as a mistake." And something in the way he said it made me realize that for him, this had never been accidental at all. His words stayed in the air long after he said them, like they had weight, like they were meant to settle into me whether I agreed or not. Not a mistake. I let that sink in slowly, my mind pushing against it at first, trying to hold on to the version of reality where I had simply taken a wrong turn, where all of this could still be undone if I just found the right exit. But that version was slipping, piece by piece, replaced by something colder, more deliberate. "Then what is it?" I asked, my voice quieter now, not because I was afraid to speak, but because I was starting to understand that louder would not change anything here. He watched me for a moment, studying me in that same steady way, like he was waiting for something, not from the situation, but from me. "A decision," he said finally. I frowned slightly, the word not fitting, not yet. "I did not decide anything," I replied, shaking my head, the frustration returning, but softer now, less reactive. I followed a map. I walked into a house. That is not a decision. He took a step closer, not abrupt, not aggressive, just enough to shift the space again, to make the distance between us feel intentional. Every step is a decision, he said, his voice calm, almost instructional. Even the ones you do not question. I opened my mouth to argue, to push back, but the words did not come. Because something in what he said felt uncomfortably close to true, like a detail I had ignored because it was easier than thinking about it too much. My grip on my phone loosened slightly as I looked down at it again, the screen still lit, the message still there, unchanged, waiting. If this was a decision, I said slowly, choosing my words more carefully now, then whose was it? Because it was not mine. For the first time, he did not answer immediately. His gaze shifted slightly, not away from me, but inward, like he was considering something beyond the moment, beyond the room. Then he exhaled quietly, a subtle movement that made him feel almost human in a way he had not before. That is what we are going to find out, he said. We. The word landed differently than everything else. Not you. Not me. We. I blinked, caught off guard by it, by the implication that I was not just a problem to be contained, but part of something that needed to be understood. Why would you help me? I asked, the question coming out before I could stop it, because it did not make sense, not with everything else I had seen, not with who he was. His eyes returned to mine, steady again, but this time there was something else there, something quieter, harder to define. Because whoever led you here, he said, his voice lower now, more focused, did not just choose you. He paused, just long enough for the meaning to start forming before he finished. They chose me. The room seemed to shift again, not physically, but in the way it felt, like the center of everything had just moved slightly, pulling me with it. I stared at him, trying to process that, trying to understand what it meant for both of us, for this place, for everything that had already happened. So this is not just about me, I said, more statement than question now. He nodded once, slow and certain. It stopped being just about you the moment you walked through that door. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding, my thoughts rearranging themselves around that idea, around the possibility that I was not the only one caught in something bigger than I understood. The fear was still there, sharp and present, but it was changing, evolving into something more complex, something that demanded attention instead of escape. Then what do we do? I asked quietly, not because I trusted him, not completely, but because he was the only one here who seemed to see the full picture. He did not hesitate this time. We wait, he said. I frowned slightly, the simplicity of it not matching the weight of everything else. For what? He held my gaze, and there was no uncertainty left in his expression now, no hesitation at all. For them to make their next move, he said. And somehow, I knew that whatever came next would not be something either of us could ignore. Waiting sounded simple when he said it, like it was something controlled, something predictable, but the silence that followed proved otherwise. It stretched across the room, settling into every corner, pressing against my thoughts until I could hear things I had not noticed before. The faint hum behind the walls, the soft ticking of something distant. Even the rhythm of my own breathing felt louder now, like the house was amplifying everything that could not be ignored. I shifted my weight slightly, the floor still warm beneath my feet, grounding in a way that felt almost intentional. Waiting for someone who already knows where I am does not feel like a plan, I said, breaking the silence because I could not sit in it any longer without feeling like I was losing something I could not get back. He did not react immediately, but I noticed the smallest change in his posture, a subtle tightening, like he had been expecting that reaction, like he had already considered every version of this conversation before it happened. It is not about them finding you, he replied calmly. It is about how they choose to reach you. I frowned, the distinction not helping the way he seemed to think it would. That does not make it better, I said, my voice steady but quieter now, controlled in a way it had not been before. It just means they have options. He nodded once, acknowledging the point without correcting it, and for a moment, that simple agreement made everything feel more real than any explanation could. I looked down at my phone again, the message still open, the words unchanged, as if they were waiting for me to respond even though I knew I should not. My thumb hovered over the screen, hesitating, the urge to do Something, anything, growing stronger with every second of stillness. Do not, he said, and I froze, my eyes snapping up to meet his. He had not moved. He had not even looked at the phone. But he knew. You do not answer unknown messages in a situation like this, he continued, his tone even, not scolding, just certain. Every response gives them more than silence ever will. I swallowed, slowly lowering my hand, forcing myself to lock the screen and hold onto the device without interacting with it again. Then what am I supposed to do? I asked, frustration threading through my voice again, not sharp this time, but persistent. Just stand here and pretend this is not happening. He took a step closer, not enough to crowd me, just enough to shift the focus back onto him, away from the noise in my head. You observe, he said. You listen. You notice what changes. I blinked, caught off guard by how simple that sounded compared to everything else. What changes? I repeated, unsure what he meant. His gaze shifted briefly, not away, but towards something I could not see, something beyond the room itself. Patterns, he said quietly. Timing. Pressure. The words felt abstract, but the way he said them made it clear they were not. They were specific, measured, real in a way I had not yet learned to recognize. I exhaled slowly, trying to follow that logic, trying to move from reaction to observation the way he seemed to expect me to. And then I felt it. Not heard it. Not saw it. Felt it. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, like the house itself had taken a breath and held it. My eyes moved instinctively toward the front of the house, toward the direction of the door I had tried to open, and something inside me tightened without explanation. Did you feel that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper now, because I was not sure I wanted to break whatever had just changed. He did not answer right away, but his attention sharpened, his posture adjusting in a way that was almost imperceptible unless you were already looking for it. Then he nodded, once, slow and deliberate. They are close, he said. The words were quiet, controlled, but they carried a certainty that made my chest tighten instantly. I felt my grip on the phone tighten again, my thoughts racing, my instincts pulling me in a dozen directions at once. What do we do now? I asked, the question coming out faster this time, urgency replacing the hesitation. He did not look away from the direction of the door, his focus steady, unwavering, like everything else had already faded into the background. Now, he said, his voice lower than before, more grounded, we stop waiting. And for the first time since I stepped into that house, I realized the silence was not empty. It was a warning. The shift in the air did not fade after he said it. It deepened, like something invisible had crossed a line and could not go back. I felt it in the way my chest tightened, in the way my senses sharpened without my permission, every small detail suddenly too clear. The lights, the walls, the silence that no longer felt still. I stood there, frozen for half a second too long before my body caught up with my thoughts. What does that mean? I asked, my voice lower now, controlled, but the urgency was there, threading through every word. He did not look at me when he answered. His attention stayed fixed toward the front of the house, like he could see something I could not, like the distance between inside and outside did not limit him the way it limited me. It means they are no longer watching from a distance, he said. They are testing the boundary. The word boundary echoed in my mind, pulling my gaze instinctively toward the door again, toward the place that separated whatever was out there from whatever this place was supposed to be. Testing how? I pressed, stepping closer to him without realizing it, drawn toward the only person who seemed to understand what was happening. This time he moved. Not away, not toward the door, but slightly to the side, placing himself between me and that direction without making it obvious, without making it a gesture I could question. By seeing what responds, he said. I frowned, the meaning not fully landing yet. What responds? I repeated. He finally looked at me then, his gaze sharper than before, more focused, like the moment we had been circling all night had finally arrived. You, he said simply. My breath caught, the realization hitting harder than anything else. Me? I echoed, the word feeling smaller than it should, like it did not belong in a situation this controlled, this deliberate. He held my gaze, unflinching. They brought you here for a reason, he continued. Now they want to see what you do when you realize you are not alone. The room seemed to tighten again, the weight of his words settling into every part of me at once. I forced myself to stay still, to breathe evenly, to not react the way instinct told me to. So what do? I asked, my voice steady despite everything moving beneath the surface. He watched me for a second longer, like he was measuring something, not my fear, but my ability to hold it. Nothing, he said. I blinked, thrown off by the simplicity again. Nothing, I repeated. He nodded once. You do not give them what they are waiting for. My grip on my phone tightened slightly, the urge to check it again, to look for another message, another sign, rising quickly, but I forced it down, remembering what he had said earlier. Every response gives them more than silence ever will. I exhaled slowly, grounding myself in that idea, in the control that came from not reacting. And then it happened. A sound. Not loud, not sudden, just enough to break the pattern. A faint chime from somewhere near the front of the house. Not a knock. Not exactly. Something softer. Deliberate. My eyes snapped toward the direction of the door again, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. Was that? I started, but I did not finish, because I already knew it was not random. Nothing about this night had been random. He did not answer right away, but I saw it, the shift in his posture, the way his shoulders squared slightly, the way his attention sharpened even further. Stay here, he said quietly. It was not a request, not a suggestion. It was the first command that felt like one. My feet did not move, not because I was frozen, but because something in me understood that this moment mattered, that breaking it would change something I could not undo. He stepped away then, moving toward the front of the house with a calm that did not match the tension in the air, like he had done this before, like this was not new to him. I watched him go, every instinct pulling me to follow, to not be left behind in a place that no longer felt safe in any direction. But I stayed. Because for the first time since I walked into that house, I realized something else had changed. I was not just reacting anymore. I was waiting too. I stayed exactly where he left me. Even after the sound faded, even after his footsteps disappeared into the front of the house, because something told me moving now would break whatever fragile control still existed in this moment. The silence returned, but it was not the same as before, not empty, not still. It felt charged, like the air itself was holding something back, waiting for a signal I could not see. I focused on my breathing, slow and steady, counting each inhale, each exhale, trying to anchor myself to something real, while everything else felt like it was shifting beneath my feet. My phone rested in my hand, heavier now, not because of its weight, but because of what it carried. The message still burned into my mind, even without looking at it again. We know where you are. I resisted the urge to check it, to see if anything had changed, because I already knew that if it had, it would not make anything easier. A few seconds passed, or maybe minutes. Time did not move the same way in that house. Then another sound reached me, softer than before, closer this time, like something brushing against the edge of hearing. Not a knock, not a voice, just a presence making itself known without fully revealing itself. I turned slightly, my eyes scanning the space instinctively, even though I knew there was nothing to see. Not yet. Stay here, he had said. The words echoed again, steady and grounded, giving me something to hold on to when everything else felt uncertain. So I stayed. But I listened. Every small shift, every faint vibration. The house responded in ways I was only beginning to understand, subtle adjustments that made it feel less like a place and more like a system, something that reacted to pressure, to proximity, to intent. And then I heard it. His voice. Not loud, not raised, but clear enough to reach me through the distance. I could not make out the words at first, just the tone, calm and controlled, exactly the same as it had been with me, like whatever stood on the other side of that door did not change the way he carried himself. I stepped forward before I realized I was moving, drawn by the need to understand what was happening just out of sight, my instincts pulling me closer despite his instruction. I stopped just before the hallway opened fully into the front of the house, the edge of the wall giving me a partial view, enough to see him standing there, still and composed, facing the door. He had not opened it. Not yet. The lights near the entrance were dimmer than the rest of the house, casting long shadows that stretched across the floor, distorting the space just enough to make it feel unfamiliar. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chimes sounded again. Closer, clearer, deliberate. I felt my breath catch as I watched him, waiting for him to move, to react. to do something that would break the tension building in the air. But he did not rush. He did not hesitate either. He simply reached for the handle. My fingers tightened instinctively around my phone, my body tensing as if I could feel the moment through him, as if whatever stood on the other side of that door was not just approaching him, but me as well. He paused for the briefest second, not in uncertainty, but in control, like he was choosing exactly when this moment would happen. Then he opened the door. The cold air rushed in immediately, sharp and clean, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of snow and something else, something I could not name, but felt deeply wrong in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. I could not see who was there from where I stood, only the outline of a figure framed by the darkness outside, still and waiting, just like him. No words at first, just silence stretching between them, heavy and deliberate, like both sides already knew something I did not. And in that moment, standing just out of sight, I realized something that made everything inside me go still. This was not an interruption. This was the next step. I could not see the person standing outside, not clearly, just the outline against the dim streetlight. But something about the stillness of that figure made it feel deliberate, like they were not waiting to be let in, they were waiting to be acknowledged. The cold air lingered in the doorway, brushing past him without affecting him, as if the line between inside and outside only mattered for me. I held my breath without meaning to, my body instinctively staying hidden behind the edge of the wall, not because I was told to, but because something deeper told me this moment was not mine to interrupt. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, not empty, but full of something I could not quite define, like a conversation already happening beneath the surface. Then the man outside moved, just slightly, enough for the light to catch part of his face. Not fully, just enough to confirm he was looking directly at Adrian, like there was no question about who controlled this space. "You have something that does not belong to you," the man said, his voice calm, almost polite, but there was something under it, something firm, something that did not need to be louder to be understood. My chest tightened, the words settling in before I could stop them. Something, not someone. I felt my fingers curl slightly, my grip on my phone tightening again as the realization formed slowly, piece by piece. Adrian did not step aside. He did not react the way I expected. No tension, no visible resistance. Just stillness. Controlled. "You are standing on private ground," he replied, his tone matching the other man's. Calm meeting calm, control meeting control. The air between them felt sharper now, not louder, but more defined, like two lines drawn in the same space, refusing to overlap. The man outside tilted his head slightly, not in confusion, but in acknowledgement, like he had expected that response. "Then you understand the situation," he said. "This does not need to become complicated." I swallowed, my mind racing as I tried to understand what he meant, what he was asking for without saying it directly. My heart picked up again, faster now, louder, because I could feel it, the shift in the conversation, the direction it was moving in. This was not random. This was precise. Planned. Adrian's voice did not change when he answered. "It already is," he said simply. There was a pause after that, longer than before, heavy enough to make the space feel smaller, tighter, like everything was closing in around a point I could not escape. The man outside exhaled slowly, visible in the cold air, and for a second, the calm cracked just enough to reveal something underneath it, something less patient. "You were not part of this," he said, his voice still controlled, but there was a shift now, a subtle edge that had not been there before. "Do not make yourself part of it." My breath caught again, because this time I understood. He was not just talking to Adrian. He was warning him, and that meant. I pressed my back lightly against the wall, grounding myself, trying to stay still even as everything inside me reacted at once. Adrian did not move. He did not step back. He did not hesitate. "You brought it to my door," he said, and this time, there was something different in his tone, not louder, not harsher, but more final, like a decision had already been made. The man outside went still again, the air between them tightening even further, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the man's gaze shifted, just slightly, past Adrian, into the house, into the space where I stood. I froze, completely. My breathing stopped, my body locking in place as if movement alone would give me away, even though I knew, deep down, that it was already too late for that. He knew. I did not know how, I did not know when, but he knew. You cannot keep her hidden forever, he said quietly, and the words landed directly where I stood, even though he never said my name. Adrian did not turn. He did not look back at me. But something in his posture changed, subtle but unmistakable, like a line had been drawn that could not be crossed. I do not need forever, he replied. The silence that followed was different from all the others, heavier, more final, like something had just shifted beyond words. And in that moment, I understood something that made everything else fall into place. I was not just inside the wrong house. I was standing in the middle of something that had already chosen sides. The silence after his words did not break right away. It settled, heavy and deliberate, like something final had just been placed between them, something neither side intended to move. I stayed exactly where I was, pressed against the wall, my body still locked in that quiet instinct to remain unseen, but my mind was no longer hiding. It was racing, pulling together every piece of the night, every word, every pause, every look that had passed between them. I was not just a mistake. I was not just someone who had wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time. I was the reason he was standing at that door, and the reason the man outside had come to claim something he believed was his. The cold air drifted further into the house, brushing past the warmth that had once felt comforting, dissolving it into something neutral, something that no longer belonged to me. I watched Adrian without meaning to, the way he stood there, unmoving, like the line between inside and outside existed because he allowed it to, not because it was built into the house itself. The man outside shifted slightly, his presence no longer patient, but not yet urgent, like he was measuring something invisible, something only he could see. You are making this more difficult than it needs to be, he said, his voice steady. But there was something beneath it now, something closer to inevitability than persuasion. Adrian did not respond immediately. He did not need to. The silence itself felt like an answer, like a refusal that did not require explanation. I felt my breath return slowly, uneven at first, then steadier, as something inside me shifted again, not away from fear, but through it. Because for the first time, I understood something clearly. This was not about escape anymore. It was about choice. Not the kind I had at the beginning of the night, the small, unconscious decisions that led me here, but something larger, something that would define everything that came after this moment. The man outside took a small step forward, just enough to close the distance between him and the threshold without crossing it. You know how this ends, he said quietly. It was not a threat. It was not a question. It was certainty shaped into words. My heart tightened again, but I did not look away this time. I did not retreat further into the shadows, because I realized something else. If he already knew I was here, then hiding was no longer protection. It was just delay. Adrian's voice came then, softer than before, but clearer, cutting through everything else with a precision that made it impossible to ignore. No, he said. I decide how this ends. The difference was subtle, but it changed everything. Not what. How. I felt it, the shift in the air, the balance between them adjusting in a way that did not favor one side or the other, but redefined the space itself. The man outside went still again, his gaze holding steady, and for a moment, neither of them moved, like the world had narrowed down to this single point of tension. And then, without fully understanding why, I stepped forward. Just one step. Enough for the light to catch me. Enough for the space between them to include me completely. My breath felt too loud, my heartbeat too present, but I did not stop. I could feel Adrian's awareness shift instantly, not turning toward me, not breaking his position, but acknowledging me in a way that felt immediate and undeniable. The man outside saw me then, fully this time, not as a shape behind a wall, not as a presence hidden in the space, but as the center of everything that had been building all night. His expression did not change much, but something in his eyes sharpened, something that confirmed what I had already begun to understand. This had always been about me. You should not have come here, he said, his voice directed at me now, no longer at Adrian, no longer indirect. I felt the weight of that statement settle in, but it did not land the way it would have before, because I was no longer standing in the same place I had been when I first walked in. I lifted my chin slightly, not out of defiance, not out of confidence, but out of something quieter, something steadier. I did not choose this, I said, my voice even despite everything moving beneath the surface. The words felt true, but incomplete, because as soon as I said them, I realized something else. He had been right. Every step is a decision. I looked between them, the space no longer divided, no longer something I stood outside of, but something I was part of. But I am choosing what happens next, I added, and the moment the words left my mouth, the silence changed again, not heavy this time, not waiting, but listening. Adrian did not move. The man outside did not interrupt. And for the first time since this night began, I understood the one thing that mattered more than anything else. Power was not just who controlled the door. It was who decided whether to